So hello, we will start now. Most of the participants have joined the webinar. So I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for attending this webinar. My name is Claudia Fall. I'm a Senior Programs Officer here at CFI, and I'm one of the leads of the College Industry Innovation Fund. And I'm here today with my colleague Ryan Gill, who is going to help me answer all of your questions. So just to start, some of you have called in. Please mute your your microphones, so we have no background noise, for all of the other participants. And you are welcome to use the chat box or the Q&A box on the right side of the screen. We'll try to answer your questions as we go through the presentation, either in writing or we'll make a pause and address these. We will record this session and we'll make the recording of the webinar available to you just after the session, so maybe tomorrow. And later on we will also provide a link to the recording on our website. So I said tomorrow. I don't think we'll be able to do that tomorrow, but by next week we should be able to do so. You can also download a PDF copy of the presentation in that little file toolbox there. So just click on download files, and then you have this as a reference document for your institution. So without further ado, I'm going to start. It doesn't work again. Okay. I'm going to delve right into it. So we are going to present to you a few statistics on the College Industry Innovation Fund today, go through the review process, because that's informative for you to see the path your proposal will take. And then share some observations from CFI's perspective and also from a reviewer's perspective with you. And then we'll take some time to answer some of your questions. As most of you know, there are two components to the CIAF. Part one is a request for infrastructure acquisition, and that does not cover the cost of research. And part two is just like Stream 1, but with a joint application to NSERC's CCI program to fund also your research activities. So both streams enable colleges to enhance an already established applied research capacity. The program is not for those who are just starting out. There's really a need to demonstrate a history in the area of the proposal. Since the beginning of the program, CFI alone has invested $64.3 million for 72 projects in 36 different colleges. And with partner matching funds, that amounts to about $1.6 billion, not including NSERC grants. Okay, so now we are going to take a look at the statistics, and the first slide here is a little busy, and also I'll say that right at the beginning. The presentation is very heavy. There's a lot of text we provide you. I will not talk about everything in the greatest detail, but it's really meant for you as a reference document, so you can refer to it at a later point in time. So now looking at this slide, up on the screen you see success and funding rates for the Stream 1 competition. So you see that in 2012 and in 2017 we had the two largest competitions to date. So we had about 27 proposals submitted in 2012 and 15 funded, which resulted in a success rate of 55.6% and a funding rate of 58.6%. And then in 2017, we had 26 proposals and 11 of those were funded for a success rate of 42.3%. So the largest size of the 2017 competition can be somewhat contributed to the fact that colleges were able to submit 2 proposals from the 2017 competition on. So overall, CFI has invested since 2012 about $48.7 million under this stream, and that corresponds to about $10 million per competition. However, you can see that there's quite some variability between competitions. So in 2001, we awarded $13.3 million, and then in 2015, only $6.3 million. And this is really due to the fact that reviewers are instructed to only recommend the very best proposals in terms of quality and for funding, so recommend those for funding, and therefore the quality of the proposals is oftentimes the limiting factor, but not necessarily the CFI budget. Now we are going to take a look at the next slide. So here you have this. When we looked a little bit deeper into the success of colleges that colleges had under both streams, we noted that many colleges, 15 to be precise, have successfully obtained funding for one project. And then there's a number of colleges which received funding for 2 to 6 projects. And it's quite interesting to see that some of these institutions that have received multiple awards have used those either to build on to their previously funded CFI infrastructure proposals or to serve different areas of strategic priority. Not all projects are funded at their first attempt. However, as you can see in that little pop-up here, the success rate of proposals that are improved and resubmitted increases significantly as they are submitted a second or third time. So for new proposals, average success rates are about 45%, and then once they are resubmitted, because they are, improved based on the constructive feedback that the expert committees and the multidisciplinary assessment committee provides. So when you revise your proposal based on these comments, then your success rates go up quite significantly to 64%, and for a proposal that's been resubmitted twice, the success rate is 67%. So just a little tip for those of you that are just starting out with their first proposal and have not yet received any feedback. You will certainly find our analysis of common pitfalls very informative. But in addition, you may want to consider reaching out to colleges with more experience for advice or mentorship. So I'll take now a few minutes to go through CFI's merit review process. As you all know, the NOIs were received by CFI in March, and we are now busy recruiting experts that will actually assess the proposals, which will be submitted in May. So after you submit the proposals, CFI will perform an administrative review looking essentially at the eligibility of expenses and whether there are any conflicts of interest with the already recruited reviewers. And this will then be followed in June, July by the expert review process. So experts in the proposed applied research area will review small groups of similar or related proposals in detail. So they will take about an hour per proposal to discuss, and they will essentially assess the strengths and weaknesses of the proposal for each of the 5 assessment criteria. So the focus of the expert committees is really the assessment criteria and dive into the detail of the proposal. So please think of this. When you write your proposal, try to put yourself in the reviewer's shoes. You know, what type of information would you need as a reviewer to assess whether the applied research activities proposed are, I'm sorry, just my phone ringing here, which it shouldn't. So now I lost where was I? Oh, okay, so put yourself into the reviewer's shoes and try to answer questions like, you know, what type of information you would need to assess whether the research activities are appropriate, why the infrastructure is needed, all these types of things. Try to think about what type of information you yourself would need as a reviewer. And then the second stage of review is the assessment of proposals by a multidisciplinary assessment committees. So those are not experts in the field. They come from all fields. It's a very diverse group of people, and they will look at all the proposals submitted to this competition. So last year it was 26 proposals they had to look at, and they don't just look at a subset like the expert committees. And they will analyze your proposal, the expert committee reports, as well as the ratings, and then discuss each proposal for about 15 minutes, and then recommend funding to our board of directors for those proposals that actually best meet the 3 competition objectives. So that's the focus for their discussion. Does the proposal fit well with the competition objectives, and does it meet the standards of excellence for the competition? And then our board will make the final funding decisions in November, and you will be informed of those decisions shortly thereafter. On this slide, we are providing you with a quick overview on how the assessment criteria evaluated by the expert committees relate to the 3 competition objectives, which are the focus of the discussion for the marks. So objective 1, create and enhance college industry partnerships, is really the forward-looking piece here. Which partnerships and business innovation outcomes will be enabled by the equipment request? And then objective 2, build upon proven applied research capacity and track record of partnerships. It's backward-looking, you know. It's to evaluate the college's track record, which infrastructure is in place, which business innovation outcomes and partnerships have been enabled by the existing capacity. And then objective 3, generate socioeconomic benefits, is pretty straightforward. So we'll delve in now with some of the pitfalls we have observed and give you some tips and tricks from CFI's perspective. So the first one is on the summary. So for each application, a short plain language summary, which is not used in the review process, as well as a proposal summary is required. The proposal summary is meant really for the multidisciplinary assessment committee, and it is not meant to be an executive summary of your entire proposal. In other words, it's meant for a different kind of reviewer than the one reading your detailed proposal, one who is not an expert in the field. So up to this year's competition, 2 full pages were allowed for the summary. But what we have observed is that we typically received a copy-paste of the executive summary of each subsection. And year after year, the MAC members have commented on this. What they were wishing for was a higher level summary written for non-experts to hear about your project in a different way. And so in response to that, we are now limiting the summary to 1 page, in which you should highlight how the proposal meets the 3 competition objectives in plainer language to facilitate the MAC's assessment of your proposal. Compute Canada. Colleges should consult with Compute Canada when planning to request advanced research computing infrastructure costing more than $100,000. Compute Canada's website provides information on the process the established process to facilitate collaboration with institutions. We had in the past to return several proposals if they failed to mention that they had consulted with Compute Canada. So if you are unsure it applies to you, please don't hesitate to ask your senior programs officer or your programs officer. Infrastructure utilization. So as you know, CFI is a matching program. Oh, that's, I'm in the wrong section, sorry. So here we want you to know that on several occasions it has happened that colleges indicated 80%, for instance, and we had to return to them and say, what do you mean by 80% research utilization? You know, you have to provide some background in that little field that is provided there. But just to clarify for all of you, please indicate 100% if the infrastructure is mainly used for applied research with private sector partners. But it can also be used occasionally for training activities as long as they are articulated around applied research or technology development projects aimed at business innovation. So however, in the case that the infrastructure will be used for purposes other than research or tech development, or these occasional training purposes I just mentioned, please only list the prorated research or technology development costs in the cost of individual item table. So you will have to prorate the cost of each item. For example, if the equipment you are buying costs $100,000 and you only use it 80% of the time for research, then the value of the equipment must be entered at $80,000. Now when we're looking at the contribution from eligible partners tables, you know that CFI is a matching program where we usually contribute 40% of the cost of the requested items, and another 40% is typically provided by the province, and the remaining 20% can be contributions from the colleges or other partners, such as your business partners, but can also be in-kind contributions from equipment vendors providing deep discounts over and above the educational discount. So there is no expectation that these vendors participate in the research activities, either that they participate in the research activities, but nothing is preventing you to do so either. We encourage you to bundle all expected in-kind contributions from vendors into a single line item. So don't list, company 1, 2, 3. Just say vendors and then bundle all their all the in-kinds provided by them. And then the total in-kind contributions from partners, that's very important. So there are two tables, right? The cost of individual items and the contributions from partners table. So in both tables, the total in-kind should match. So should be equal. So financial resources for operation and maintenance. In this table, please include all costs related to the operation and maintenance of the infrastructure, even if they come from other sources than CFI. So we have seen several examples of proposals in which the O&M costs were heavily underestimated, and we totally recognize that this is an aspect of the proposal that is generally not very well understood. However, the long-term sustainability of the equipment is very, very important to CFI. And that's also why we provide an additional 30% of our contribution to an award in the form of IOF, Infrastructure Operating Funds. And we recognize that the IOF provided may not cover all O&M costs in their entirety. However, it's really important that you consider the full spectrum of O&M costs and that these are described in the proposal. Another aspect to highlight is that please consider year one in this table. So there's space to fill in the O&M costs for over 5 years. Please consider year one to be the first year of operation for the infrastructure. Don't include the time when you are still purchasing and installing your equipment, as O&M costs, of course, for those periods will be much lower. And also another aspect that's very important, take the time to properly fill out the O&M table, but also explain this table and in the infrastructure and budget justification section of the assessment criteria attachment. So make sure that the numbers and the table match those in your text, and that you talk about the same categories, the same sources of revenue to cover those costs. And then we are going to present here something about floor plans. So that's another PDF attachment which only applies to projects that have a construction or renovation component. Please only use this attachment if you for floor plans. Anything else will have to be removed from the proposal. Now for the assessment criteria, that's also a PDF attachment, which you will have to upload into CAMS. And this is really the heart of the proposal. It contains key information on how the proposal meets the objectives and assessment criteria for the competition. And it has so not only the assessment criteria, but also all the aspects of each assessment criteria. And I will talk much more about this in a few minutes. So please make sure to address all these aspects, because if you don't, this will actually weaken your proposal. You can address all those aspects in the order of your choice, but specify in the proposal if one of the aspects doesn't apply to your particular situation. So now leading into the next slide, some of the aspects have changed since 2017, and we have highlighted them here on the next slide in yellow. So those changes are not, well, they were mainly based on expert committee on MAC member comments, and we mainly tried to clarify our expectations and just clarify overall the language for you. So, I forgot something. For the main part of the proposal, please avoid repeating yourself between sections. We have heard from reviewers over and over that there is too much repetition in the proposals, and I'm sure no one, wants really to upset a reviewer. So please stick to that one guideline. Don't try to repeat yourself between the sections. So now delving into the observations from our reviewers, we actually conducted qualitative analysis on 41 expert committee and MAC reports from the last 3 College Industry Innovation Fund Stream 1 competitions. And here we essentially assessed how often certain types of comments would appear or be repeated in those reports. And you will see that this actually will provide you quite a nice analysis of common pitfalls. So within each of the 5 criteria, a number of common weaknesses was noted by the expert committees, and in the majority of cases, these weaknesses were also identified then by the MAC. So, for instance, lack of detail, lack of focus, those come always back in the expert committee reports as well as in the MACs. So consequently, those projects were then not recommended for funding. We truly provide these observations to you as a tool or a checklist, if you wish, to avoid pitfalls that or showstoppers that other projects have experienced, and to ensure that the appropriate level of detail is provided in the 2018 proposals. So I'll show you now the top 6 key weaknesses identified by the expert committees and MACs. And here we have leading with 83% of not funded proposals where the infrastructure request was actually not described in sufficient detail or was not sufficiently justified. And then in 65% of the cases, the experts felt that the applied research activities were not described in enough detail. In 52% of the cases, we had of not funded proposals did not detail the contribution of industry partners to the applied research activities, and 47% of expert committee reports for not funded proposals identified a lack of detail in the description of past business outcomes. So you see a lot of lack in detail, not justified. It repeats itself throughout this analysis, and I will go through each assessment criterion and provide you an even more granular breakdown of those weaknesses that were identified by the committees. So we start with the contribution to business innovation. That's the first assessment criteria, and it's assessing whether the research activities have been determined based on the expressed needs of an industry, and that the appropriate methodology to achieve the intended business innovation outcomes was selected. So those activities should serve an industry sector rather than individual companies with very specific needs. Make sure to respond to all aspects you see here in the red, in that red box there. Those highlighted in yellow, differ a little bit from those that we had in the 2017 competition, but really nothing major. Contribution to business innovation, I'll continue with that with a little tips section here. Please focus on your future plans. It's a forward-looking section and provides sufficient detail so that experts in this field can actually evaluate your proposal. And as we just said, the most common pitfall in this section is insufficient detail on the research activities and methodology and lack of detail on the industry consultation. For example, if you say 25 companies were surveyed, committee members expect to see what type of companies were surveyed or organizations, companies or organizations were surveyed, not just the number. So on the next slide, you will see now a complete breakdown, and I'm not going to go into the detail of those. As I said earlier, please use this as a checklist when you prepare your proposal. The one thing I want to highlight, though, is everything you see here in blue or light blue was identified by the EC, and then those that are highlighted in green were not only identified by the expert committee but also by the MAC. So those are likely the showstoppers. They made it all the way up to the second level of review, and the percentages, as before, are for not funded proposals. Now, looking at the infrastructure criterion, we are again providing the standard up in the gray box on top, and the details in the detailed aspects in the red one. Here, make sure to describe each item as well as its main features in detail. Without a sufficient level of detail, the expert committee is really unable to assess whether the equipment is well suited for the proposed applied research activities. And again, a breakdown of the most common weaknesses found, and those highlighted in green were not only identified by the expert committee but also by the MAC. Capacity, enhancing applied research capacity. Again, standard and aspects are provided here. And so in this section, the experts are actually evaluating whether the proposal is built upon an existing applied research capacity at the college, which is essentially the intent of the CIAF, as I mentioned before. So it's a backward-looking aspect. It's your track record. So next slide. Make sure for key participants, so the team members, to describe roles and contributions of each team member in detail in this section, as this is an expectation of reviewers. And then again, a breakdown of common weaknesses identified by the expert committees and highlighted in green those that were also identified by the MAC. Partnerships. Again, standard and aspects are here. So the experts will actually, give me 1 second, we'll look for, experts will really look for a solid past and current record of partnerships with the private sector in this section of the proposal. and they want to know whether you are building upon previous success with your business partners. So you also have to make it clear that this area of research is really a strategic priority for your college. Also, make sure to explain how these past partnerships were related to what you now propose to do. So there's a tendency to provide performance statistics on partnership in general, but lacking the connection to the present proposal. And then again, a breakdown of weaknesses identified by the expert committee in green and light green, and then those on the left here, that where the numbers are highlighted in yellow, they were also identified by the MAC. And here we go. We are already at the benefits to Canada sections. Again, proposal and aspects, those that changed slightly to the 2017 competition highlighted in yellow. And in this section, please, it's quite important to describe the impacts on the region and industry sector or even other sectors. But really impacts that are above and beyond those outcomes already described in the contribution to business innovation section. These outcomes will likely occur in the medium and longer term, so focus on those, please. And again, the breakdown of weaknesses identified by the expert committees, and in green, those that were also identified by the MAC. Now, we also give you a breakdown just as a checklist for yourself of those weaknesses that came up during the MAC review. So you have them here by objectives, ordered by objectives. And once again, the percentages are based on not funded proposals. And really make sure to review those ones very carefully, as they are most likely to be showstoppers at the MAC level. So before addressing your questions, I would like to remind you that proposals should be submitted by May 15th. And please, please, please don't forget to also send in an electronic copy of the CIAF proposal submission cover letter. It's a long name. It's a cover letter that goes with your proposal, and you can find it in the appendix of the guidelines to applicants, which is on our website. So it's an electronic copy. Email it to your senior programs officer, and all will be good. Also, we recognize that the deadlines for Stream 1 and 2 proposals are somewhat overlapping. So we wanted to let you know that it's okay to submit the same proposal to both streams. In the case that a proposal is funded in one of the streams, it will be simply withdrawn from the other stream. So this will complete our presentation, and I will now enter any of your questions. I don't know, Ryan, are there any? No, maybe I can give you a few minutes if you want to type in something. You're also welcome to email us, email your senior programs officer with any questions. They will be able to answer or, ask for input from the College Industry Innovation Fund team. If you don't know who is your senior programs officer at CFI, you can also email the CIAF@innovation.ca or use this email address. We are monitoring that address. So so I see there is a question on whether the presentation slide deck is available. Diane, you can download the presentation slide deck in that little window above the Q&A section. Files 2 is it called. Just click on the file and say download. And as I mentioned before, we are recording this session, so we will be providing you with a link to the recording probably by next week, and we will post the slide deck as well as the recording on our website probably also next week or within 2 weeks. So I see a question here on whether you can add more team members. Yes, that's possible. There is a limited number. I think it's 8. I skipped that section. So you can only add a limited number in that team module. But if there are more team members, please just describe, put their names and contributions to the project into your text of the proposal. That's fine. And I can't read the phone. So then there is another question on, please elaborate on seeming incongruency between the request to focus on sector needs rather than individual company needs, but the need to provide details of research and methodology. Well, actually, when I said I don't want, of course, the applied research projects you have in mind are with specific partners, but we want to avoid a situation where you ask CFI for very specific infrastructure that only serves the need of that particular company. So really the infrastructure should be versatile enough to respond to the needs of the whole sector. That's why it's so important to really consult with the industry at large before you start your proposal. Because if it's just for one partnership, the infrastructure may be obsolete within a very short time frame. Brian, are there any more questions?
Just reply the individual ones.
So I'm just repeating here, there was a question on whether the recording will be available. Yes, we will post it on our website, and we will also send you a link probably by next week. So if I've addressed all of your questions, okay, I see there's another question popping up, so I'll give it a Oh, so there is a question on whether the applied research, well, the focus of your proposal can change from NOI to proposal submission. That's like, I think we should discuss this offline. So Ravi, please feel free to send me an email. My name is Claudia Fall, so you can email me at claudia.fall@innovation.ca, and we can discuss, because this depends on how major this change is. Slides, the additional office an aspect to the proposal is probably fine, but a complete change would not be. So we should discuss more in detail. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I would say, thank you very much for your participation. Don't hesitate to contact your senior programs officer, or as I said, email the CIAF@innovation.ca address if you don't know your contact, and I'm sure we will be able to help you through the process as much as we can. Okay, so this will conclude the presentation then. Thank you very much, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to the submission of your proposals then in May. Okay, thank you.